want you to kind of understand. I need to know, A, how are you going to perceive that information? And I
Mm,
don't want to waste time. Like, if
yeah,
I tell
yeah,
you on the first date and you're somewhat okay with it, okay, fine. But if you're a lot of times what happened in the past was it was almost I could see it in their eyes. Like it was
mm,
almost a green light to be like, "Oh, well, I could just add like, oh, well, I could just add sprinkle a little bit more trauma on her cuz she's already traumatized."
yeah.
Or, "Oh, I know she's going to be easy because a lot of sexual assault survivors are easy. So, I'm probably
That's
going to
a
get laid."
yeah, and that's a terrible way to think, and it's mad predatory for one. Let's talk about that. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think as a person as a person who's also an SA survivor and a domestic abuse survivor, it's like you think about those things, and I think and obviously it's I think it's a little bit more different for women than it is for men because
Uh-huh.
and not in the sense that you know we don't want to disclose it. It's just the fact that there's no safety in disclosing it. Like I think for
Right.
myself, I disclosed it to one person, like my sexual assault, and she was so reductive when I told her. And she literally told me, she was like, "Well, it's not the same because you're a guy." And I'm like, "Actually, it's the same.
It's
It's
absolutely
assault."
the same.
Like, I'm looking at her
Any
like
s
it's assault. Like I
It's
didn't. It was
assault.
unwanted contact. Like I didn't want to have sex with this person. Like I was forced to. Like in the
Too,
heat of the
right.
moment, and the situation was so messed up because it not only it was somebody that I didn't want to do something with, but it was also somebody I knew. And when you talk about the statistics in most aspects, like it's
Most
always
it's
somebody that
somebody you know.
you know. And so when
Mhm.
it happened, it's like, yo, what am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to feel? And of course, as a man, you want to talk about dealing with like the shame and the various myriad of emotions that come up. Who can you talk to? Who can you trust to disclose the information? How it affects you and how you deal with your relationships moving forward. Like, it took me years to even want to discuss it. Like, I was well, I want to say I openly finally discussed it maybe I'm 39 now. I was 35. It happened to me when I
That
was
was 4
21.
years that was
I
40 years 4
that was
years ago.
yeah, and I disclosed it at 35. It happened to me when I was 21. I didn't tell nobody for years. I didn't tell family members. I didn't tell people I dated, and it affected me. But the thing was the the ways in which men are looked at when you tell them, "Oh, I've been assaulted," or "I've been sexually assaulted," or if you're in a domestic violence dispute and you tell somebody, "Oh yeah, like they did this to me." Well, how? You're a guy. I'm like, what's your point? Like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, what exactly does that mean? Like, it's the point where like patriarchy now works against me because it's saying, well,
Against
as a guy,
right,
I'm supposed to be able to handle this situation. Well,
right.
and, I have only a couple of options here. If a person puts me in an uncompromising situation, knowing what's going on, I have to quickly make a decision and figure out, well, what to do. So that way I can reduce the harm and make sure I don't harm this other person either. How am I
Right.
supposed to do that? I don't think a
So,
lot of times people think about that.
they don't. And one thing I wanna say to you is that I am so terribly sorry that that happened to you because I feel like when men talk about it, they don't get that. They don't get the compassion and the empathy of, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That shouldn't have happened." So, I'm here to tell you, I am so sorry that that happened to you. It should not have happened. And not only that, I am so sorry that you didn't have a support system in place, that you had to carry that with you.
I think a lot of it is that, and I think that's a big thing when you talk about like why, like you mentioned, a lot of men are emotionally unintelligent. They lack empathy. I think this idea that we have to be cold or stoic is so embedded and entrenched in our psyche that we don't know
Mhm.
anything outside of it. And all
Right.
we know is we got to be a man and what a man is, we don't show emotion, we don't show weakness, we don't show. And I think there's this thing where it's like it's automatically associated with femininity, like
Yes,
compassion, nurturing, things like that. And it's like that's not a feminine trait. That's a human
absolutely
trait.
not.
I
That's a
mean,
human
that's
trait.
a living being trait because even animals show empathy. So, but that's just you're a living organism. We're talking about being a living organism and being able to see, like, you see somebody hurt, that affects you. Like you see
Yes.
somebody going through something that automatically you see an animal or anything where they're suffering and you notice it, it does something to you here, it does something to you here. So I think to have men compartmentalize their emotions, you are then stripping them away of the very thing that makes them a living organism, the very things that allows them to explore and take in the things that make living worthwhile. And then you wonder why you have these you know incel ass dudes on freaking podcasts and stuff like that going crazy about what they expect from women and how women's supposed to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. But it's like, bro, what are you
Mhm.
giving in return? Like, have you thought about that part? No.
Mhm.
Like, you're expecting these women to be high value, but what is your idea of high value? What are we putting value on? And a lot of times it's tangibles
It's
because they don't know.
superficial.
It's superficial. They don't know how to deal with the untangibles, the intangibles. Why? Because nobody showed them that. Nobody, exposed them to that. And as a person, and myself, who grew up in a household where I watched so much, emotional, physical, psychological violence, and at a young age, I had to find a way to look at that and say, what that is, I don't want to replicate.
Mhm.
And that's something that you have to really make a conscious decision to
Effort to
do.
do. Mhm.
And I think a lot of men, the pressure of being a man, especially if you're a black man, because you're already dealing with a world who wants to try to break you down and emasculate you anyway, and put this idea of manhood on you that you have a choice to either subscribe to, or it's very binary, and they don't realize that the spectrum of it is a vast array. Manhood is much like just humanity in itself. It's like it should be vast. It should be
Mhm.
exploratory. You should not have to sit there and there's this rigidity that we put in place on both men and women in this aspect of
Mhm.
gender. Like, it's like you're placing people in a confine of a jail and a prison, and you're not giving them the option to think differently and to expand their notion of like what it means to exist in this form. If we are the universe in human form, as Rumi says, then that means we are made up of a vast array of molecules, things, thoughts, emotions, synapses that are firing in all different cylinders. That means that we should be able to experience things in all different cylinders. So why are we sitting here and then confining each other to this one lane and saying this is what it needs to be, this is how we need to be, and not challenging to say, nah, let's detour, let's go off road.
And exactly. And to add to that, when you were confined, even by notions of how you were supposed to be as a woman, as a man, as a kid, as a whatever, you're not really free.
No.
Because, and that's one thing I started noticing when I decided that I wasn't really going to mask my symptoms of anything anymore. So I may be, there's a very good chance I'm on the autism spectrum, and I believe it. I don't have an official diagnosis, but I also have ADHD. And I have masked so much in my life that I just decided I'm not doing it anymore. And once I started not doing it anymore, not only did I feel freer, I was like, oh, this feels pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
because, like, and it's like, I really don't care what anyone thinks because this is who I am. And if you have a problem with it, I don't want to be friends with you anyway. You're not someone I want to be around.
Exactly.
And I felt freer. I also felt freer the more I started kind of deconstructing my Christianity and stop thinking in such a binary way. When I started going, there are a plethora of ways to do a multitude of things. There are many ways to do it. And as long as we get to the same point, even if I did it different than you, we're good. Because I feel like society teaches us there's one right way to do something, there's one right way to be. And if you're beyond that, then you're weird, you're strange. It feeds into the fear. It feeds into the fear of, well, you are not white, so, and you look different,
Mhm.
or you're LGBTQ, or you're trans, or you're whatever. And it's like, yes, and they're still human beings, and they still
Right,
deserve grace, empathy, respect. They still deserve all of that. Whether you don't have to live their life. So if
right,
you sit there and go, well, I don't agree with the LGBTQ lifestyle, okay, don't be LGBTQ. Don't live like them. And FYI, they're living like everybody else. They're
right.
just living their life, and this is who they are.
Yeah, like
So
who they are and how they show up in the space is based off of how they have chosen to, you know, identify and how they feel to show up in the space, what feels true to them. And that truth is their truth. And you don't have to you don't have to understand it, but you do have to respect it. Like I feel like
absolutely.
that's the bare minimum is the respect of it. Respect it because it's like it's theirs. It's theirs alone. It's their truth for them to claim. Who are you to tell somebody else what's not true to their experience? And I think that's the part that a lot of people do not get. A lot of people do not understand. And it's like you want to, well, why is it this? Why is it this? Well, maybe it's not for you to understand. So you mean to tell me that
Exactly.
so you mean to tell me that y'all have no problem being like, oh, God works in mysterious ways. So if God works in mysterious ways for a lot of you people that are, religious and whatnot, then that
Mm-hmm.
means the mysteries of the human experience should be a mystery, right? Because we are all showing different. We all think differently. We all view things different. We all experience this life differently. We have similarities, but there are aspects of our personalities, there are aspects of how we feel and in the way that we show up that are different and are only akin to who we are at our core. So if that's the case, the mystery in there lies that we ourselves are showing up and being embedded of God in His purest form. A mystery, right? So
Right.
like, why is that so hard for y'all to understand or get? But y'all can understand something in a book that was written, God knows how many years ago, and translated how many different times over the course of how many years. Let's
And
talk
was
like
written by fallible human beings who had agendas.
exactly. And let's not even
And
talk about. And I was gonna say, now let's not even talking about the fact that the books that's in the Bible was voted on by the Council of Nicaea. Ergo, where you creed. So if that is the case, if we really want to talk about it, like for those who have such an issue, I think you might want to step back and scale back just a little bit and think about like the vantage point that you're coming from. Because
Mhm.
it's truly a place of ignorance. It's truly a place of misunderstanding. And it's truly a place of like at the core of it, you can't sit there, and I'm saying this for all the folks who might be religious, especially my Bible thumpers. You cannot sit there and mistreat someone because of their gender or anything like that, and then sit there and quote scripture when in the scriptures it literally says, Jesus says that the less you do to my brethren is what you do to me. So if that is the case, how are y'all really living what you're talking about? Like, I don't get it. You like, so
They're
you're Christians
they're
only when
not
it fits, only when it's like convenient. That's convenient Christianity. I don't think that's what he had in mind. I
because
mean, it's
because
just a
they
thought.
they don't. And a lot of people, just people in general, whether you're a Christian or not, a lot of people live their lives so they can appear a certain way to the public instead of just because what the public sees and how the public views me is way more important than how I truly authentically live my life.
Mm,
And that's why I decided I'm not masking anymore because how I truly decide to live my life is more important than how you feel about it.
And I am proud of you for that, because that is so
Thanks.
important. Because it's so important. I think a lot of it is that our experiences, just like anything else, are not linear. I mean, are not necessarily linear. We have
No.
various aspects of us. And I think in order to fully understand and care about somebody, you have to be able to understand all aspects of them. You know, people show you what they're comfortable showing you because they're not sure of the other parts of them that you might, you know, either deny or, completely disavow because you're uncomfortable. So it makes them uncomfortable. And
And
to show up
and
authentically is to be able to say, like, look, this is who I am on any given day. I could be here today, I can be here the next. If you care about me, then you need to understand that this is the all-encompassing aspect of who I am. I think
and
that that's the important part of it. And I feel like, anybody that comes across you, anybody that comes across, this person or that person, has to be able to take that in, and the risk that you are seeing this person in their truest form at all times and loving that person and allowing them to make their way through as they go through their experience, because that's really what it is. We are all souls having a human experience.
right. And I think a lot of that too has to do with not being comfortable with who you are as a person. Um, and
You
that
might want to
can
say that a
be,
little louder. Just say it.
I think a lot of it, the fear that people have of other people, the dislike of other people really has to do with not being comfortable with who you are as a person. And that could be for various reasons, the way you were brought up, your upbringing, your environment. Um, I know for me, I wasn't always very comfortable telling people that I was a SA survivor. I wasn't always very comfortable telling people that I have chronic depression, I have generalized anxiety disorder. I have a whole CVS receipt of things. It's a CVS receipt of chronic mental health issues. And I wasn't always comfortable because I wasn't comfortable knowing that that was a part of me
Right.
because I just wanted to be normal.
But the thing
But
is,
what
yeah,
does
go ahead,
normal
say it.
mean? What is
Exactly.
normal?
That
What
exactly.
is normal? Who dictates what normal is? And so I was like, but you don't feel good when you want to be normal. So just try being yourself.
Mhm.
You're a fabulous human being, Kia. You're a fabulous human being. You're a really great friend. My one of my best friends had me bawling earlier today because she was just like, "You're just such a wonderful person, and you don't judge me, and you just love me for who I am." And I was like, "Because I like you as a person, and when I like you as a person, and I decided to be your friend, I decided to be your friend for all that you are. I accepted you for all the things that you are, not just for the things that I like or the things that would benefit me. I have to like and accept you, all of you.
Mhm.
And I want you to show up in my space, all of you. I don't want you to feel like you have to mask or you have to close off a part of yourself because you're going to judge me. Because I know what it's like to be friends with judgmental people. And I'm not
Mhm.
friends with them anymore because I didn't
Exactly.
like how I felt when I was around them. So guess what? I'm not going to do it to other people either.
Preach
We
church
cool, we
tabernacle.
cool. I don't care what you've done. I may not look, there are certain things that are deal breakers, okay? You can't be racist, you can't be anti Semite, you can't be an Islamophobe, you can't be transphobic, homophobic, hateful. You can't be any of those things. You can't be against you can't be calling other human beings illegals. Like those are deal breakers for me. You can't be nasty to wait staff, to frontline people. You can't do none of that. Those are non-negotiables. If you act like that or say something like that, I don't want to be friends with you. But everything
Right.
else, it's on a spectrum. I don't necessarily have to agree with you, but I'm not going to judge you for it either.
Right.
It's
Like
just That's something I'm not going to do. I'm not
Right.
going to judge you for it, and I still love you.
Yeah. Like I love banana Laffy Taffies. Not a lot of people like them. I kill them. That's just what it
I
is.
banana. Do I like the banana ones? I think I like the strawberry, but I tend to like strawberry stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm partial to banana just because I like the banana Laffy
Okay,
Taffy.
I like
Yeah.
banana. I like banana now laters.
Me too.
I
That
like banana now laters.
yeah,
Um,
joint is nice.
I guess I could eat a. Look, I'll eat anything
I
with
mean,
sugar in
they,
it. So,
they taste the same pretty much.
and they do taste pretty much taste the same. I think I like now laters more because that was the kid I. That's the candy I grew up
That's the
with.
candy I grew up with. Yeah.
I'm the I'm the I was born in '76, but I was a kid in the '80s. So we
So yeah,
had now laters, Boston
yeah,
baked beans,
Boston. Yeah, we had the Boston baked
uh,
beans.
lemon
We had
heads.
lemon heads, right? The warheads. We had all the joints. Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember when candy was you get 100 pieces of candy for $1. Like that was the time I lived in because I'm an '80s baby, but I grew up in the '90s. I was born in '84, so it was like the '90s is kind of late '80s, early '90s is kind of
Yeah.
what my childhood was. So it's like during that time it was just different, and so we had the candy cigarettes.
Yes, candy cigarettes, bubblegum cigarettes.
Right. Like
Um,
we had the joints, the Chico sticks.
I
Man,
didn't like Chico sticks.
I did. I was a big fan of Chico sticks. They only
I didn't
cost
like
25
Chico
cents
sticks.
too. I used to buy like 4 of them and go to town.
I did like Chico sticks, and I didn't like the big pickles. I like pickles. I
I
like
didn't,
them,
I didn't
but
like
I
the
wasn't getting the big ones.
I
I like a
didn't,
speared pickle, like the ones you get with your burger. But I
okay.
wasn't getting I wasn't getting the big pickle. I remember so I know this is going to sound weird to a lot of younger viewers, but there was a time when Cool Ranch Doritos did not exist. I know you're like, "What?" They didn't exist,
They
y'all.
didn't.
They did not exist. They didn't
They didn't.
exist. They just weren't always there. And I remember when Cool Ranch Doritos came out, first of all, it was a big to do because it was just I think in the '70s you had the taco flavor. It was like taco flavor or something Doritos, and then you had the nacho Doritos. And then like I forgot, in the '80s they came out with Cool Ranch Doritos. And every day I would go to the corner store after school and they were 50 cents a bag. And I would get 2 bags of Cool Ranch Doritos and devour them. And I did it for months. Now I can't stand Cool Ranch Doritos.
You're supposed to do everything in moderation, right? It's moderation. Everything
I
in
don't
moderation.
do anything in moderation. I go hard. Like, okay, ask ask my best friend Sheeta. My best friend Sheeta and we used to work together. And at one point she was my boss. And we bonded over a trip to Philly to Made in America because she loves Beyonce and Beyonce was there. And I just absolutely fell in love with her, platonically, of course. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just love her so much. So when we got back, I was like, you're my best friend. And she kind of looked at me like, what? And I just looked at her, and I don't even remember. I didn't remember initially saying this until she reminded me. I looked at her and said, oh, I don't have to be your best friend. I'm just telling you you're mine. Okay, bye. And she was just like, okay. And eventually she was like, yeah, you're my best friend too now. And I was like, because I just go hard in the beginning. I just do. I love everybody in the beginning. And I stay on the I love you track until you start showing your ass. And when you start showing your ass, I have to go, hmm,
But
I may
see,
not say,
I think it's
huh,
hard to do that now, though. To just to kind of just go hard from the beginning. And the reason why I say that is because so many people are so traumatized from their experiences
mm-hmm.
um to the point where they can confuse it for love bombing.
Yes.
And I think it's like you almost got to be careful with that, because you could literally authentically really care about this person, and they will receive that and look at that as if like this isn't normal for me. This is,
Right.
especially if it's something that they're not used to. They will look at it like it's an alter. There's got to be an ulterior motive. You're doing too much too fast, and it's
And
like
I and I understand that, and I think I want to say hopefully that it doesn't look like I go hard. Like when I said that to Sheena was like, "Well, I didn't know you was going hard for me like that." Like we had a great time, and I think my thing too was it wasn't so much love bombing. Like I was like, I have to talk to you every day, and I'm gonna be upset, and blah blah, because I'm very much like I like my alone time. I like my space. So but I want you to know that if you need me for something, I'm here.
right, yeah,
And I gave her space because she kind of looked at me like she done lost. This lady done lost her mind. I'm not. You are not my best friend. And I was like, that's okay. I don't have to be. I don't have to be your best friend. And so my other best friend, who I've known longer, was like, well, what happens if she said she didn't want to be your, like, if she wasn't, she didn't reciprocate? And I was like, I just would have faded. I would have went to a level she was comfortable with,
right,
pretty much. Because I mean, I can't force myself on somebody. And when I
right,
say I go hard, it's not me really forcing, like trying to force a friendship. It's just for me, like, I really like this person. And when I really like you, it's like, I want to talk to you and learn things about you. Like, what do you like to do? When, I like to play The Sims. Do you like The Sims? I watch Bob's Burgers. You like Bob's Burgers? Like, you like Bob's Burgers? You like skincare? Like, but it's done in a way where hopefully I'm not love bombing. But I think that's just part of my thing of when I find something that I like, I go all the way deep
and
into it. It becomes
yeah,
kind of like a passion, and that weaves a little bit for me into relationships and friendships.
yeah, and I think it's also care. I think about it too is like, because that used to be how a lot of people were. A lot of people are not like that anymore. And I think a lot of it does have to, some of it I feel like is influenced by the way that we interact via social media. I do think that social media and, the internet, the way in which people communicate now, has in some ways kind of like, I want to say, homogenized the way that we interact socially. Because I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of it is very digitized, a lot of it is very transactional. um, it's more so seeking validation than actually seeking connection. And I think,
That's interesting that you say that because I think a lot of times I'm in my own bubble. And you're right. I think you're right. But I don't interact in social media that way. Like I've been in chat rooms and everything since like not so much the dawn of the internet, but when did I get my first computer that had the internet? Maybe late 90s, early
yeah,
aughts.
I was like, I was 15. I remember that we was in the chat room going
I
crazy.
remember all
We
the
was
time.
like, this is different.
And for me, because I was always very awkward in real life. So for
Right.
me, being in a chat room was a way for me to kind of be myself, and I don't have to mask. No one can see me. And I was always able to easily make friends in in digital world. And
Yeah.
so that's just naturally extended now, like with IG, TikTok, Facebook. I was part of a Facebook group where some of the people I'm still friends with today, um, and some I'm not friends with anymore, and some I'm still friends with. And just like with TikTok, like some of my mutuals I've already met in person, and we're friends, and I consider them good friends, and I've met them in person, and it was like a natural thing to me. But I think you're right. I think a lot it's harder because people are seeking validation, they're seeking clout, they're seeking their viral moment. And so
Right.
when you're looking at social media like that, which is I don't look at social media like that. Um it's very easy to have very superficial relationships or only relationships that are going to benefit you because that's how you're looking at it. Um, and I'm not doing anything for clout or validation anymore. Like, I started this podcast because I don't like my voice. I think it's whiny and annoying sounding. And I don't like the way I look. I don't think I'm attractive, but apparently I am. Um, and it's like I did this so I could get over that.
Right.
To get over that fear, because I could have easily done this podcast audio only, but I was like, no, I'm going to show my face. It's not a
Yeah. I
bad
mean,
looking face, so I'm going
bad
to
face
show it.
off. Yeah. You got the
So
mug,
I'm
you got
gonna,
the dimples and stuff going over there
yeah,
too. Yeah.
and you probably, and I have hazel eyes. You probably can't see my eye color because my lighting's bad, but my that's another reason why people don't think I'm black either, because they see my eyes and I have that curly, coily type hair. And so people are just like, yeah, I don't think I am. Shut up. Anyway, um, and I was just like, I want to conquer this. Want to I don't want to look at my face in the mirror and go, I don't like what I see. I kind of want to look at my face in the mirror and go, I like what I see. I want to get over the hump of not showing my face in social media because a
Hmm.
lot of times I don't. It took me a really long time to show my face on Facebook. And I only did it after I completely locked my Facebook down. Like, you can't find me on Facebook
Oh, most people
unless
can't.
you're
Yeah.
a friend of a friend. If
Right.
you know a friend of mine, you can't find me on Facebook. My personal IG is private. And I show my face on my personal IG, but all those people that follow me on IG are people I know in real life. They've already seen my face.
Right.
So I was like, this is a way for me to show my face to people who don't know me
Right.
and to take whatever comes with it. And it's like, you really can't say, I've heard every insult ever created. There's not much you could say about me because I've heard it all. So, and that was another thing. It was like, okay, if someone says you're ugly, how many times have someone said you're ugly? So what?
That's true. I mean, listen, I mean, look, I'm a 5'5", 125 pound. So I've kind of heard everything under the sun as far as like, my height, my size, and it's like, it's something, by the time I was 13, I was like, I ain't getting no taller, so I just accepted it for what it was. But it's like, I tell people, like, I'm not tall, dark, and handsome. I'm short, cute, and stubby. So there's a difference. So you gotta you gotta adjust. You gotta adjust a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta
I
adjust.
think you're very handsome.
I'm
You're
like,
not just cute, you're very
I'm like,
handsome.
you gotta. But I also think what it is too is that when when you live in a society that has you constantly in a comparison Olympics with everyone else, you constantly have to, weigh your worth against other people. As a black person, you're weighing your worth against black, white people, anybody that's not black. Like,
Right.
because it's just like, well, the closer you are to white or that, it's the more accepted you are. It's the more attractive you are.
Mhm.
It's the more this, that,
Mhm.
and the third, the more worth, the more value. Our value is already, you know, placed on us when we get out the womb. And then you have to
Right.
find ways to find value in your existence. And then
Mhm.
and then another part of it is being able to build connections from a shared humanity space. And
Right.
in these days, that's hard to do. So, you know, I think what I would say in response to what you shared is, one, like, you should be happy that you're taking this step.
Oh, I
Two,
am.
yeah, you completely proud of yourself for taking this step. It's a big step. Two, feel like you shouldn't put so much emphasis on whether or not people like you or not. Fuck them. You're
Right.
gorgeous, and you're gorgeous. So let's stop there. So I think a lot of times we have to be able to turn off not only the voices out here, but the voices
But
in
the
here,
voice in here. Right.
and that's the hardest voice to turn off. It's
the
on that.
most hardest voice.
It's
It's
the
the most
hardest.
hardest voice because like I don't care what people think anymore, which is why I was like, I'm just gonna do this podcast and I'm just gonna say stuff, and there's gonna be a lot of people who's like, I didn't know that about Kia. I didn't know that. Okay, you know it now though. Like, and if you are going to feel some type of way about it, that's going to be negative. Keep it to yourself. Unfollow me. Don't take my phone calls. Like, whatever you gotta do to make yourself comfortable, bruh, go ahead and do it. I really don't care anymore because
Mhm.
I am I'm becoming comfortable in who I am as a person. And I want
Mhm.
everyone to feel comfortable in who they are as a person. And I want all Black people to feel comfortable with who they are as a person. And
And
I am acutely aware that that is easy for a Black person that looks like me to say because I have a little bit of privilege. I know that.
yeah, I mean,
But
but I think it's also fair to acknowledge the fact that while your hurdles might be slightly askew because of the privilege, it doesn't mean that you
they're
don't
still
feel
there.
you're still
Right.
there.
They're
It's
still
just
there.
they might be slanted, and that's okay. And I
It's
think a lot
it's
of it
not
too,
as it's not as overt.
right? It's not as overt,
It's
and
not
that's
as
true.
overt.
It's not. And while that is true, but I think you can still say that in that vein that you want everyone to feel that sense of pride and worth and
Mhm.
who we are as a community, you know, and what we have been able to overcome, what we've been able to survive, and the fact that joy can be on the horizon. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
joy doesn't have to elude us our entire
Yes.
lives.
Absolutely.
Like,
And
and I
that
think that's the core of it, is that we have been relegated to a story of pain and struggle and suffering. And it's
yes.
like
And
when you and
trauma
trauma.
bonding. And I want us to start living joy joyously. I want us to start just being happy, frolicking, doing dumb shit. Like I feel like Black people don't get to do dumb shit.
We don't. We don't. We can't afford it. We
We
can't
can't
afford
afford it.
it.
Not only can some of us cannot afford it financially, but we also can't afford it kind of, how can I put it?
We can't afford it
Um
socially. Like so
socially, we
we
can't
can't
afford it. Right.
socially. We can't like white kids can make do some stupid shit and they will get and they're like, oh, it's just, whatever. And like we do some stupid shit and it's just like, yeah, that might have just cost us like everything. Like
Mhm.
everything now is at risk because we decided to make one slight little stupid mistake. And
Right.
it's because, you know, our mistakes are out there for everybody to see. They're out there for everybody to judge and to say, well, that's just how they are.
That's because everyone is so I thought about this a couple weeks ago. Society is always waiting for Black people to fuck up,
Oh yeah.
whereas society is always waiting for white people to do something great. And so when we do something great, it's not looked at because you're too busy waiting for us to fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
And and when white people fuck up, you're too busy waiting for them to do something great. And
Right.
so
Or they're
there's
shocked.
like, or they're shocked. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. They would do something like that. Oh,
I can.
okay.
I can.
But you're not shocked when oh, I should have known. Like,
That's just how
what
they
is
are.
that?
That's
That's
just
just how
how
they
they
are.
are. Like,
That's just
yeah.
how they are. And
You know
it's like
them people.
I want us to be able to live our lives and be great, be proud of our accomplishments. I need for all Black people to kind of come together, stop competing with each other, um, and start really building a community because there are more people in the global majority than there are white people. And right now we're at a point where white supremacy doesn't even have to do anything because we're doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing it for them. They're just sitting there like, well, damn it, if we didn't just have them do our dirty work for us. And I'm like, being close to whiteness doesn't mean anything. It's not going to guarantee you anything. And the dividends are only short term and immediate. The long
Mm-hmm.
term effects of that is much worse. And tokens get spent eventually. You may not get spent
Exactly.
today or
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow or next week, but you may get spent next year.
And I think the thing is that people who become agents of white supremacy have to ask themselves: is the instant gratification worth the long term harm and effects that the community suffers through because of what you decided to do? Like, you got to ask yourself that question, because it's like, yeah, they love you now, and they love the harm that you're causing our community now, but it's like, is that worth the long term effects that we have to then try to find our way to sift through and go through, because you decided that you wanted white people's approval and you wanted to be palatable to them? And I think that in itself is a complete utter betrayal of everything that our ancestors fought through, died for, in totality. Like, I don't understand how you could logically look at certain things and be on a certain side that, from the jump, has had our extermination lined up since day one. The minute we wanted to be free, they were like, "Oh, we got to get rid of these niggas ASAP." It's been on the plan, like, and they've done everything they could possibly think of. And I mean, just it just goes to show you, our blackness is nothing but a commodity to them at the end of the day. And I think a lot of times people don't understand it. Like, if they could say, "Oh, well, my black friend says that I can do A, B, C, D," it's like, okay, well, yeah, your black friend, that's one. That's singular. The black community and the black delegation is telling you, you try that shit one time, we're gonna have a problem. And
Yes,
it's like,
and as the new chair of the Black Delegation Cookout Committee, I am here to inform everyone, all non-Black people, your cookout passes have temporarily been revoked pending review.
yeah, y'all on
You may
time out.
not get them. You may not get them back. And you being married to a Black person will no longer guarantee you a spot at the cookout.
You got to sit outside the house, behind the
You
fence,
you
on the
you
street, on
get
the
you
curb.
get a plate. We're going to make sure you get a plate.
I mean, we'll
And
feed
there's
you.
some
We're
we'll
not
because we
savages.
if Black people gonna do nothing, right? If
We
Black
gonna,
people ain't gonna do nothing, we gonna feed you
we gonna feed you. Like, you might have to sit on the
and give
curb, and we'll bring your plate
and
out to you. Yeah.
I mean, and if you at my family's cookout, we gonna feed you and give you a little bit of liquor too, because that's just how we do. We drink and have a good time.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's revoked. And I heard that there are some non-Black people with VIP cookout passes, and Stacey Abrams did not try to turn Georgia blue for non-Black people to get VIP cookout passes. So all of those are permanently revoked. You're never getting those back. Um, but I just wanted to tell everybody that as the new cookout pass committee chair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever.
Yeah, for
Free
real.
the
'Cause, like,
hood. Free
right.
free the hood. Free the
For real. All right,
free the
for
hood.
real. Cause y'all playing. Like, I'm sitting there like, I can't stand with people like, who is giving out these passes to the cookout? Like, y'all just giving out plates. Like, who discussed this? Did
And
anybody
I'm
sit
still
down and say this was okay?
and I'm still trying to figure out who the hell gave Justin Timberlake one. Like, how? What? Oh,
Listen,
and FYI, you're not getting yours back ever. Like, we're done. You're done. You're done. You're done. You're done. You're done.
look, hey man, look, yeah, I love Justified just like anybody else, but man, I'd be damned. That's about where it stops. Yeah, I can't do Justin no more. I can't. You know, just a,
I feel I feel for Britney. I didn't always like her, and I feel like I owe her an apology because I believe that your thoughts and feelings about people, I do believe that they can kind of feel it even if you don't know them.
yeah,
And I hated on her for no other reason than I felt she was something she was not. And I feel like I should apologize to her. So to Britney Spears, I'm really sorry. I'm now a fan. Um, that woman has gone through a lot, and I want her to have a happy life.
Oh yeah, for sure. Her and Janet
I her
post
yes,
post
I
Justin.
like I just her and Janet. I just want her to have a happy life, and I want her to know that I'm rooting for her.
Yeah.
The way my thought process has changed from my 20s to now. I used to be a moderate Democrat, and now I would dare to call myself a socialist. Like, and this is therapy, and this is how therapy can be a really good thing. Even though the
Hmm.
therapy is for me specifically, my mindset and my perception and how I view the world is totally completely different.
I think a lot of it too is because it comes from a place of when you find empathy and grace for yourself, it allows you to extend that grace and that empathy to
And
everybody
empathy to
else.
others.
And
And
I
that's
think that's
exact
the important. Yeah, that's the
And
important
that's
part of it.
exactly what happened. I started extending grace and empathy to myself. And when I started doing that, it's like, this is really easy to extend grace and empathy to other people. And it's very easy to go, you know what? I don't even want to compete with you. I don't want to hate you. I don't want to think badly of you. I don't want to do any of those things. I want you to have a wonderful life. If you are healing from something, I truly hope you heal from it. And like to you, I hope you heal from your trauma. That is just, and I want more men to start talking about their trauma in an authentic way. That was such a wonderful thing you shared with me, and I kind of feel honored that you shared it on my podcast because that was like a really big thing. You didn't have to do it, but you did. And I hope that other men can kind of learn from that.
I,
Like,
I think a lot of it is men have to be more open about the things that hurt. And I don't think that and let me also add this. And they have to be able to admit it, but not at the expense of punching down on women, particularly black women, because I think a lot of times when we talk about our pain, at some point, a black woman becomes a target, and it's a lot of times indiscriminately, or like, it's like we have to mention this at the expense of either reducing black women's pain or making them be the source of our pain. And it's like that's not how that should be. Like, at the end of the day, black men have to understand that yes, as men, we do have privilege. We may not have as much privilege as a white man, but that privilege
right,
is there by virtue of the fact that we are men, and that
right.
because black women have to deal with, you know, their oppression twofold because of intersectionality, because they are women and they are black. They have to deal with their, intersectionality of being black, dealing with white folks, and then being a woman and dealing with men. And then, of course, having to deal with black men. And then it doesn't help when there are black men who subscribe to patriarchy or subscribe to misogyny or the aspects of wanting to be as in close proximity with whiteness and white manhood as possible. So then they end up, replicating the same oppressive tendencies and tactics onto black women. It is important and indicative that we be able to have these conversations honestly and be able to say, like, these are our grievances, but not at the expense of reducing or being reductive to what black women have to endure on a daily basis. Like, we can be honest about certain things without saying, well, black women don't know how to do a da 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 da, and black women da 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 da. Like, we don't need to do that. And I think that's something that has to be said. I also feel like black men have to also learn how to create a safe space for each other. The problem is that men can't say things openly and honestly without being somebody saying, "Oh, pause," or "That's gay." And it's like, bruh, that's why we can't have honest discussions. We can't have real, truthful dialogue. If I can't have a close relationship with my fellow brother or my fellow friend because it's going to be looked at a certain way, that's a problem. And that's
Mhm.
society's problem, not mine. I tell my brothers and people that I consider my family, I love them all the time. And that is something that Black men need to hear more of from other Black men. It shouldn't just be relegated
Yes.
to who you having sex with. The fact that
Right.
the only time any emotion is being shown is when you're vulnerable in the bed with somebody is an issue, is a problem. And it's not just, our society doing it to us, but we're doing it to each other because we're subscribing to it.
Mhm.
I remember, and I think what helped me one day really get to a point where I could talk about my sexual assault was I was on Twitter before Elon took over. Thank God this happened before Elon took over. But I was on Twitter, and there was a group of Black men actually having a conversation about their assaults. And I read through the thread, and they were all sharing various situations that happened to them. Some of them, it was, it was a woman was older than them and took advantage. They didn't know this was this and that. It was a close relative of theirs. It was this, that's that. And I'm like, and I'm reading the stories, and I was so inspired that I actually told my story in the thread, and I told everybody what happened. I broke it all down. I was at a party, and at the party, I was with a friend of mine who I used to who I went to college with. She got super, super drunk, and she was ready, and like she was to the point where she couldn't even stand. So I took her up to my friend's room because we were at his house to go, to try to make her sit down. And in the midst of me trying to get her comfortable, she started, getting a little familiar to the point where then she pinned me on the bed and had me tucked, and I'm against the headboard and I couldn't move. And there were a lot of things that were said that were very uncomfortable to the point where she questioned my masculinity because I didn't want to have sex with her, to the point where she even threatened to tell people that I was trying to do something to her, that I was going to try to do something to her. It placed me in a very uncompromising situation. And all I can remember during the encounter was sitting there biting my lip and waiting for her to finish so I could get up. And then she keeled over. And when she keeled over, I slipped out and literally like left. I ran out the house, hopped, and I took the bus home. And I didn't speak to her for weeks. Because I didn't know what to say after that. It's like, what do you say to somebody who you were friends with? You were in the same class as them. You have to see them at school. Like, I didn't speak to her when we went back to school. I didn't say nothing. I just did not know what to say to her, because then it's like, what do I say to this? How do I even address you? And it wasn't until, I got some more horrible news on top of that I had to talk to her about it, because I had no choice. And it forced me to say, hey, just to let you know, you need to go to the doctor. Because,
Mhm.
she gave me something, and I'm stuck with it for the rest of my life.
I'm
And
so
I
sorry.
and that's the reality of it. And I didn't talk about it for years. For years. And of course, it my entire life was altered. My relationships with people
Right.
changed. So like you have to
Oh,
then
yes. Absolutely.
you have to then now dating is different now. I have to disclose information
Yes.
and then have to worry about how people are going to treat me
I'm gonna
because it's
be
something I didn't do to myself.
dupe.
So it was like everything was altered. My entire life was altered. And like,
Mhm.
and then on top of that, I was too afraid to tell people I got it because I was assaulted. I had an encounter, and this is what I got. And to be able to talk about it, and the messed up part about it is walking around, see people joke about it, make comments about it all the time, even to this day. And I'm older now, so I'm just like whatever. I just chalk it up now to ignorance. But at the time, I
Right.
felt like a leper, because it's like, it wasn't my fault. That's all I kept telling myself. It wasn't my fault. I didn't do this to me. But
It
now I gotta
absolutely was
suffer.
not your fault.
Right? I gotta suffer, and I have to wear this brand on me as if like I'm just the nastiest thing walking when I did
Right.
nothing to deserve this. and can't even
Exactly.
talk. I mean, I got people who I would consider friends who I grew up with talking about it openly, like talking stuff about people who have this and that. I'm sitting there just like, if y'all only knew, I got it, and how I got it was unfair to me. And that's it again. That goes part with that piece of safety, being able to be safe and talk to people that you trust. It took me years before I could sit down with even my family and say, "This happened to me." Like I didn't tell my ex-wife after we were divorced about my sexual assault. And me and her are me and her are really close. Like her daughter is my goddaughter. Like that's how cool we are. And I after a therapy session one day, I sat her down and I was like, I gotta tell you something. And I told her, I was like, this is what happened to me. And she was like, she just in tears. She's like, that explains so much that happened. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
that explains why didn't you tell me? I was like, I was scared. There's a fear, like the
Mm-hmm.
level of vulnerability that it takes and the level of safety that you have to have in order to share certain things, and hoping that whoever receives it is in a space where they can receive it and give you the empathy and grace that you need to know, like, hey, this was a tough situation and it's hard for me to even think about and relive,
Right.
let alone now tell you and trust you with this information.
Except for a fucking men. Amen. Amen.
Like that's
The
the hard part. It's like trusting you now with the information that you don't use it against me. And the last relationship that I was in, which was almost 3 years ago now, I trusted her
same.
with that information. And because we got into an argument, she publicly outed me on social media. To this day, I haven't forgiven her for it.
You
Because
don't
it was
and you
like,
don't have to forgive her for
and
that.
I and it was like, I told you this in confidence. It doesn't matter that you were upset. It's the fact that you were so upset that you felt that it was okay to give unwarranted information about me to the
Right.
global masses, but I didn't say your name. It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't, like, everybody knows you're dating me. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
So it was
Exactly.
like the fact
Exactly.
that you even went above and beyond to even say that. How do you think that makes me feel now? How do you think that's going to make me operate when dealing with other people now? Because it's like,
It
dang,
it
if
makes it makes you not want to deal with other people because
I
that it
don't
makes
trust
you
them with
not
the
want
information.
to it makes you not want to my last relationship was probably about 3 years ago, and I was dumped because they were uncomfortable. And my so I was assaulted at 11, 17, 23, and 43. 43 was right before the pandemic.
Oh, I'm
And
so sorry.
I spent the pandemic going through a breakup, which in hindsight, laugh at it now. I can literally laugh at it because I'm like, in hindsight, this motherfucker wasn't worth any fucking tears I shed. But I was goddamn distraught. I was just distraught. Like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this to me. But something horrible had just happened.
Right.
And and you were not in the right frame of mind when you do certain things. And I'm like, and it's really funny because my therapist is like, you probably would have ended up dumping him anyway because he wasn't you were way too good for him. So you probably would have ended up dumping him. And she's right. I would have. First of all, I didn't want to really date him anyway. I was trying to give him a chance. Like the first date we went on, I was like, I don't want anything to do with this person. I mean, not romantically. I'll be friends with him, but I don't want anything romantically. I really don't know what happened between that time and it. But yeah, I probably would not have dated him, and I should have stuck with that. But I was in the you should give people a chance, Kia, because your standards are too high, and you should give people a chance. I should have left that motherfucker on the curb where I found him.
You should have.
But it's okay because that was a really big learning lesson, and I've learned so much. And so instead of being angry at what he did because he just was emotionally stunted and couldn't communicate, I thank him because, you know, it helps in an immeasurable way. And so when I become famous and you have to look at me on a billboard, you can then go, man, I could have had her. Yeah, you could have, but now not. And when you see me on the street, pretend you don't fucking know me because I'll be doing the same. I don't know you. Who are you?
Hey, hey, preach church tabernacle. For real.
And he wasn't a bad person, but he spent an inordinate amount of time trying to be someone that if he had just gone to actual therapy and not a life coach, he could be that person.
Yeah, true.
And
And
that's the sad part. That's sad. That's the sad part about it.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times when we talk about relationships, there's a lot of it. And the one thing that I learned, the biggest takeaway that I learned from my last relationship was how you engage and work through conflict is so key to the success or failure of the relationship. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't understand how important it is that we can disagree but still hold space and have grace for each other within that disagreement. We cannot see
Yes.
eye to eye and still be able to treat each other with the space and the love and regard that we have for each other when everything is well. That should still be infused even in the moments where we are butting heads. When
Right.
that dissipates, that is a problem. It's a recipe for disaster. You can be
Mm-hmm.
mad at me, yes. Explain your grievances. Tell me what I did wrong. But still remember that I am a human being. And remember that we are in this, we're supposed to work through it. At the end of the day, it's not us it's not you versus me. It's us versus the problem. How do we
Exactly.
solve it? How do we get to some resolution that we both can agree with? Where there are actionable steps agreed upon, where there is, some restorative justice that's taking place, and that we can both move from this situation being wiser, smarter, and have a better regard for each other, even more so than when we first got into the conflict. If that can't happen, we have a problem.
But
And the
that
thing
required, I'm sorry, keep going.
No, and I was gonna say, and that piece I feel like was something that in my relationship, the last one I was in, was something that was missing incredibly, because it was like it takes both of us to get to that point. It takes two people. You and both have to be just as instrumental in making that happen. And it's hard when it's one person that's trying and the other person is just expecting you to do everything else.
And and that requires a level uh of emotional intelligence. It also requires uh emotional regulation. You have to be able to regulate your emotions. Just
Mm-hmm.
like the person who outed you that you were dating, they could not regulate their emotions and separate this person is still a human being and told me something in confidence. And so, regardless of how angry I am, I'm never going to tell anybody. And I've had that where someone told me something in confidence, we're not friends anymore, but I'm never going to tell that anybody that because you told me in confidence. So even if we're not talking anymore, even if we break up, even if whatever happens, I still respect you enough as a human being to keep your confidence because that's what you wanted. That's what you want. And that's what you deserve. It's not even just what you want. You deserve that. If you come to me and go, Kia, I have something I have to tell you, don't tell anybody. That means don't tell anybody into perpetuity. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean I get mad at you and I get to tell everybody because I'm mad at you. And a lot of that is some of the reasons why I won't date. Not being able to understand that I'm a sexual assault survivor, not being able to understand that I have chronic depression, I have anxiety, and my anxiety can get really, really bad. Not understanding that I have ADHD or any other multitude of things. Why do I want to date you? If you're not gonna, if I can't, if you're not gonna help me understand that, I don't want to date you.
Right. And if you're not going to actually hold space for me to be vulnerable with you when those
With
moments come up, because that's the key
right,
part too. It's like,
because that's the key part.
can you walk with me while I work through this? Sometimes I might need you, sometimes I might not. Sometimes I just need you just to be there. Your presence is tantamount to, being able to help me regulate and come back to center. Sometimes it's just knowing that I have your support. I don't necessarily need you to solve my problem. I just need to know that your support is there and that you're understanding that, like, look, I'm having a moment right now. I think that was one of the biggest things that I can say that I learned that in my marriage with my ex-wife, because she would have her moments where she'd have anxiety and she'd have major depression, and her depression would lead her to suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I we really worked on making sure that, like, when that would happen, I had all the safeguards in place. And that's
Right.
something that, she's always, you know, made me realize that, like, I helped her to understand herself better by walking with her and not sitting there like trying to, you know, try to say things just to pacify her. I say things to help her cope. I say things to help her work through it. And sometimes I say nothing at all because sometimes she doesn't need me to say anything. She just needs me to be there. Like, and you have to be, a lot of it is learning the love that people receive. You have to be able to be fluent in their language.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't do that, there's always going to be something lost in translation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One final thing, because we're at 2 hours and 12 minutes. Did you know
Oh,
that?
this conversation definitely went.
Uh, this is gonna have to be a two-parter. I'm gonna have to do part one, part two. It's a very special episode if I got a lot of things to say. Um, one last one last thing, because you saw my Hello Kitty and my Melody. My friend Laura bought those for me.
uh,
Um, and you also saw my very young Bob Belcher, because
yes,
I love Bob's Burgers. And we were talking earlier. Do you watch Bob's Burgers? It's like that's your thing. This is the final thing we're gonna end on a up note.
yeah, and yeah, a lot of heaviness in this. So, I don't. I actually need to catch up on Bob's the Burgers because I've seen episodes. It's been hard to watch TV lately just because of school and everything. But,
Right.
um, I do love Bob's Burgers because obviously I'm a big fan of, like, adult animation. I'm a Simpsons
Me
fanatic,
too.
so, like, I grew up.
Okay.
See, I'm
And
a
my
Simpsons.
and mine was King of the Hill.
Yeah. See, yeah, so you do know that what's his name? Craig, is it Craig Daniels? Whatever, the guy that made King of the Hill. He initially worked on The Simpsons first before he went.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I did know that.
So
And they're
yes,
doing a reboot of King of the Hill. I
yes,
don't I don't know what's going on with that, cuz the guy who played Dale Gribble died.
yeah, and that's gonna, yeah,
Um and like Dale Gribble is very integral to the show, so I don't know if they're going to recast him or whatever.
right.
Um um one of the things I did with my friend was we went and go, if King of the Hill was on during the Trump administration, which character would have voted for Trump? And we all agreed that Dale Gribble not only would have voted for Trump once, but twice, and would have been at January 6th and would
Oh,
have
he
got
would
arrested
have.
for sedition.
Yeah, definitely was arrested for sedition. I could, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Um, but before he got arrested, he would have gotten Rusty Shackelford arrested, because Rusty Shackelford was actually a real person. He thought Rusty Shackelford died. Because I don't know if you know that, but Dale Gribble used to use the name Rusty Shackelford whenever he got into trouble. And he thought that Rusty Shackelford died, but he didn't die. He just changed schools, elementary schools. So after getting the real Rusty Shackelford hemmed up, they would have found Dale Gribble and arrested him.
Facts.
Um, Hank Hill, I'm not too sure about would be Hank, because I don't know. I feel like he would have maybe voted for Trump the first time because he was a Republican. I don't know if he would have voted for him a second time. But I do believe that Peggy would have voted for Hillary Clinton and not tell Hank.
Facts. She would have definitely kept it under wraps.
She would have definitely kept it under wraps, but she would have definitely voted for Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Geronimo,
Yeah.
this has been an amazing time with you, and I want to just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Truly, I've cried, I've laughed, I've had church. I've cried, laughed, had that. You had a good time when you did all of those things. Like, you cried, laughed, have church. The only thing I didn't do was have a drink, but I'm about to do it after this.
It is my pleasure. Definitely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of a very special episode. I got a lot of things to say with my new friend of the show, Geronimo Ronin. You are a friend of the show. You can come back whenever you want. Just let me know.
Oh,
Um,
I'll be back. I'll definitely be back.
okay. You better be back.
Look, I definitely will be back. I got way more shit to say. So I'm not done. Like, yeah, you said it's part one. You said, I'm coming back. You already spoken in existence when you said part one. I said, I guess I know what
Right.
that means. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Fam, stay safe, stay warm, and tell somebody that you love them. And also, when someone tells you something in confidence, keep it, even if you're not friends with them anymore. That's my parting line. Until we meet again, y'all, I'll see y'all later. Bye.